Most people don't know how to sketch, and that's the biggest problem, because when you don't have a great drawing, it's very difficult to either ink it or to color it. So let's just look at sketching. Now I'm taking just a normal pencil and rough paper, and the table's a mess, and you don't really care about that. If you care about neatness, that's fine. But look at that sketch. Now, what's different about that sketch? And that is that I'm working in circles. Look, this is how, and notice one thing, and that is the pencil is not leaving. So it's not going up, coming down, going up, coming down. No. It's staying with the circle. Occasionally, when I move from one eye to the other, you would have noticed the pencil came up briefly. But I'm sketching. And really, that's what you can do. You don't have to, once you've figured out what you want to draw, and even if you haven't figured out and you're just sketching, you're doing very rough sketching like that. And this is what makes drawing so exciting, is that you're having fun shading. And you see, this took a few seconds, or maybe a couple of minutes. And really what you're doing is you're playing with stuff, you're exaggerating, you're making the mouth bigger, you're making the eyes scream. I don't know if eyes can scream, but that reminds me of ice cream, so we'll draw ice cream. He's afraid of ice cream. Now, the whole point is that this forms the basis of your drawing, the sketching. And if you sketch more like this, just with these circles, you will find that your whole drawing gets much better, because this is the basis of all drawing, the sketching. So once you've decided, okay, I'm going to draw a person who's scared, or I'm going to draw a person who's bored. Well, that's bored, and that's angry. But if you just do these circles like this, it's not as interesting as something like this. Because this allows you to expand the eyes, make the nose more bulbous, do things like that. Whereas this is finite. And then if you want to ink something, what do? I use this nib, and I always take it out. So I use a nib like that. And I always take it out. I'll keep it on the piece of paper so you can see it against the white. And I always clean it as much as I can. I didn't always do that, and often it would get dirty. So I always take it out and clean it just with, just with your fingers, or even with a pencil, or just wash it and then wipe it like that after you're finished. And you dip it in the ink, and now what you're trying to get are thick and thin lines. So when I put the pen down, I'm pressing down, and see that line gets thick, and then I can go thin and then thick, and of course you run out of ink. So thick, thin to thick, thin to thick, and you keep drawing, or you keep inking. So here I'm going down, it's thick, going up, thin, down, thick, up, thin, thick, up, thin. And so that's when you start to create the magic of thick and thin lines. Now, notice how this line is almost continuous, so it's continuous. But I'm going to show you on the left-hand side where the line is not continuous. So it's a bit here, then I leave it, then a bit here, then I leave it. And I don't have to finish this. I can just go indicating that this exists. See, and the eye fills in the rest. That's a bit of a shadow, and you're done. Now, of course, you want to wipe this down. Just dip it in the water, wipe it down. And you can use a brush as well. A brush holds far more ink. So if you dip the brush in like that, that's got a lot more ink. So you can go thin and thick. The brush is a little harder to handle, and it depends what kind of brush you have. So the nib is far easier to handle, and if you want more control, you're going to have to use the nib. For a brush, you're going to need a bigger paper. So for instance, that's going to be much harder for me to draw than a character that's bigger. So now if I'm drawing the same character large, the brush stroke is beautiful. See that? It's thick and thin. That brush stroke is really lovely. And then I can break the lines. So, see, you get this beautiful feeling. The thing is, when you're running out of ink, you get this dry. So this is full of ink, full of ink, full of ink. I leave it. And then you get this dry kind of stroke. If you look here, you're getting this dry stroke. That's when it's running out of ink. And, with a brush, you can keep it inked for a very long time. So that's your thick and thin lines. If you're drawing this small and you're trying to control it, it's very hard. So if you're going to be using a brush, use a bigger piece of paper. If you're going to be using a nib, use a smaller sheet of paper because, a nib is not going to give you that thick lines. And that's pretty much it. Once you're done with it, wash your brush, wash it properly. See, this brush started out being blue and it's now clean. And that's it. That's your nib, that's your brush, and that's your pencil. And that's the magic of sketching.
So could you just summarize what you just said? What have we learned today?
Well, the first thing that you have to do is you have to make sure that you're sketching, not drawing. Most people draw. This is drawing. And you want to sketch. You want to scribble. And as soon as you go back to this very finite kind of drawing, you're going to get very stilted kind of drawing. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, when you're using a nib, you want to make sure that the nib holds a lot of ink. I have other nibs like that. So if you look at this nib, for instance, that doesn't hold a lot of ink. And so I have to get a nib that suits my purpose. Now, you can only try this out by going into the store and playing with it. It's impossible to tell you which nibs. But this is the kind of nib that works for me. And so after trying out a lot of nibs, that's what I got. So the nib will work on a very small area. So when you have something that's really small, you can work with the nib because it runs out of ink pretty quickly. When you're going down, you can make it thick. As you're going up, you make it thin. Down, thick, but it runs out of ink. So if you have that problem and you don't have the patience, go with a brush and use the brush, but use a bigger sheet of paper when using the brush. If you noticed, I was not able to control the brush so much because that brush was too thick for something that small. So I need a really thin brush, a really small brush, and a brush like this, which size 8 would not work. And maybe I'd have to go to a 5 or a 4 or 3 or even a 00 if I wanted to get the same results. So that's pretty much it. And make sure that you wash your stuff. These brushes are too expensive in many cases to go out and buy new ones. So just make sure that you wash it and you'll be fine.
So can I just clarify one last point? Are you saying that if I'm drawing a larger image, I should use a brush? And if I'm drawing a smaller image, it's better to use a pen or a nib pen?
Correct. And that's what, anyway, cartoonists, that's what they do. Cartoonists never draw in the size that most amateurs draw. Amateurs tend to draw in this size, which is a really small size. And it doesn't free up your drawing. You take a nice big sheet of paper, and notice this is not fresh paper. This is folded, recycled paper. You've got lots of this lying around. And that's what you want to do. You want to take this nice big sheet of paper and you want to play with it. You want to draw with it. You want to take that brush and that's it. So use the bigger sheets of paper. They'll work for you.